Hey y'all, welcome back to Convos with Brie. Today I want to talk about why I'm doing a year-long visibility challenge. A year can seem like a really excessive time frame for a goal that you are struggling with. I personally have been struggling very much with remaining visible when things are tough or when I feel like I might say the wrong thing. I might upset somebody. I have a lot of vulnerability around other people and their reaction because I have been a long time people pleaser and I have done a lot of work to not necessarily break up with, but reroute the way that I was approaching people pleasing. And for a long time, I found myself a little bit resentful. And sometimes I still struggle with that. And I'm diving in deeper and wanting to allow myself the ability to let go of everything that comes with people pleasing and the way that I have previously gone about it. So, the first thing that I noticed was that I needed to start pleasing myself. I needed to truly start putting myself first in situations that I never did without being resentful. And that was challenging. That came with a lot of unprocessed emotions. And this visibility challenge is really about finding myself throughout the next year. I turned 39 years old yesterday, and I thought, my gosh, what a perfect time this is. 39 to 40, 1 year to get to know myself in a brand new way before I bust down that door to 40. I'm very fortunate because I grew up with my mom who beat it into my brain my entire life that you were not old at 40. 40 was when you had made your significant mistakes, you have failed, you have tried and not succeeded. You have had success, but it was all a part of learning. And when you hit 40, it's when you really started to live your life from a place of, oh, I understand. I understand how to live a better life. And honestly, just seeing even my parents and who they are now and how they did their 40s, I genuinely think that as you age, it just gets better and better. And the world has truly taken away that path, that way of thinking, that mindset, and has warped so many of our brains into thinking this is when you'll be your sickest, this is when your body will be your weakest, this is when your life is over. It's just all downhill, like all downhill from here. I do not align with that way of thinking. And I have seen so many badass people in real life. I know them that are 80 years old and they live it up. I know people at all ages that are just getting better and better each and every year. And their biggest difference between the way that they live versus the people that are stuck in that mindset of it's all downhill from here. I'm so old and whatever else they tell themselves is just that. The people that are getting younger and aging backwards, They're not afraid to live. They're not afraid to die. They're not afraid. They just are present, and they're aware of how important their mindset is for their quality of life. So I think that this visibility challenge is the best time to do it. And the reason I chose my birthday is because when I think about myself a year from now, sitting down and making a video for y'all and talking about where I was when I started and who I am now and all the things that I have learned, it feels so good in my soul. I feel invigorated. I feel alive. I feel lit. It just feels right. So today already, it's only day 2, and it's a big day today. It's a big day today. There are things going on behind the scenes that have my full energy, my full, just everything is not here. But I made this challenge because even in the hard times, there is growth. Especially in the hard times, there is growth. So here I am showing up for day 2, and I've decided I want to talk about why I'm doing a year. I'm doing a year because I quit drinking for 3 years and 4 months. And I mean, not even one drink. I did not have a sip here. I did not have a drink there. Nothing. No alcohol touched this body for over 3 years. And it's funny because I did a lot of mini challenges where I did a week here, 2 weeks there, a month here in February because it's the shortest month. And I knew that it would be very challenging because at the time I kept implementing these tiny challenges, I was an alcoholic. It was all I thought about. It was all I wanted to do. I could not wait for the moment that I could have a drink, and I could it felt like that's when my day started. That's when I came to life. And I only knew myself in those moments. The rest of the time, I felt like it was just all about everybody else. I was doing the things I had to do. I was being responsible. I was making sure that everyone else was good. And then when I was drinking, I was off. I was off the clock. I was my own person. I didn't have to be me anymore. And I loved not having to be me for a while. And somewhere in the mix, because I started drinking very young, all my friends started drinking very young. I mean, not all of them, but the ones that I really hung out with and the people that I knew, we all had we grew up pretty fast when it came to our environment and what we were dealing with. If you did read my second book, Young Writer's Day, Fragile Minds and the Adults That Mold Them, I had some pretty horrific experiences very young. And the thing about that book is I didn't even write the worst things that were happening at that time of my life, which looking back, and I've been flipping back through the book. I'm actually playing around with an idea for it, but you can see it here. I can't believe everything I went through, and it wasn't even the worst things. And it's heartbreaking because no wonder I was the way I was. No wonder we all were the way we were. And when I decided that I was going to quit drinking, the month challenges almost killed me. I didn't even think I was going to make it a month. It was so boring and isolating, and everyone I knew was just waiting for that challenge to be over. They did not support how desperately I was wanting to get away from alcohol and wanting to expand and grow. And I did not have anyone in my corner that was rooting for me to do that. Um, when I said I was going to do it for a year, nobody was happy with me about that in my actual life. In fact, it caused more turmoil than it did celebration. And I had an extremely isolating and lonely year. All of my relationships, I'm talking all of them across the board, struggled. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know anything. I didn't know who anyone was. I felt like my life was no longer mine. I had just stepped into an unknown that I didn't really want to be a part of. And yet at the same time, I did so badly in my soul. It was like my mind and my body were fighting each other. But then my body would crave alcohol and I would be so sad. And the only thing that really kept me going is my goal of 1 year. I would have never made it. If I only did 30 days, I never would have changed. If I would have done another small challenge, I never would have got what I needed. And I knew in my soul that it was right. 1 year was the right challenge. And my God, it was so hard. It was so hard. But then the craziest thing happened. I quit on New Year's. I technically quit a few days before New Year's, but I was still like clearing out my system. And I didn't want to say my official start date was until I had everything out of my system. So I used New Year's. It was a really easy date to track, and I'm not great at like anniversaries and dates and remembering that because half the time I don't even know what day or month it is. But I picked 1 year, and I figured when I rang in the next year, just like I'm doing right now, I would be able to celebrate and talk about it. Whoop. And I just kept picturing that. I just kept picturing myself 1 year later and what I felt like and who I was. And it felt so nice. It felt so nice. And I just knew I had to try. And then a month went by, and 2 months went by, and 3 months went by, and I took my very first sober vacation, and it was the first time I had ever left the country. And the minute I got off the plane, all I wanted to do was have a margarita in Mexico. And I called a friend at the time, and I said, I just want to put my whole face in a margarita. And she said, well, then do it. Just do it. Just break the streak. Who cares? And I was mad a little bit on the inside. Not at her. I was mad at me. I couldn't even believe I was considering just giving it up. And I said, I thought I would have taken the out, but it just made me want to stay in it even more. So I successfully completed my first vacation sober. And while I was there, I ended up getting a phone call that one of my very, very, very dear friends was found and in the hospital now. And he was, I knew the minute they told me that he was gone, but they tried to convince me there was a chance, but I could feel it. I felt him. I knew he was gone. I knew he was gone the day that they found him, the day that he was unconscious. I knew he was already gone. And my partner at the time was still struggling. My partner is still my partner. But he was struggling with his own alcoholism and his own issues with drinking. And I had to deal with all of that on my own. And it ended up being a very eye opening trip for us in a lot of ways. Some phenomenal, some tough. We were really trying to navigate this new relationship, and a big part of our foundation had been built on drinking together. So it was pretty difficult when I just decided to change completely and not be that version of myself anymore. And we knew that there was a good chance we wouldn't make it through that because I was so very much so needing to be away from alcohol. And he was very much not wanting to be sober. So it like I said, it was very isolating. It was a very trying time. And I honestly didn't think that any of my relationships would survive it. I thought that I would end up being completely alone, like for the rest of my life, because that's how it felt at that time. I just felt so lost. And I questioned myself every couple of days for the whole first year if I was really making the right decision. And then my 1 year mark rolled around. It was New Year's, and I was at a wedding for two people that I love so much. I love their family. I loved everyone that was there, their friends. Everyone was so phenomenal. Everyone was drinking and having a great time. We're in Chicago, one of my favorite places to be. And there was champagne on the table for all of us to toast and celebrate. And I picked up the glass and I put it to my lips. And I just felt this, no, I don't want this. And I didn't even take a sip. I went to put it up to my lips and I stopped and I put it down. And I realized the only reason that I was even trying to make myself take that drink was because my partner had stated so many times how excited he was for me to be done with this challenge and to drink with him again. And he was drinking significantly less and really trying for me because we knew we wanted to make it through this. We knew we wanted to remain together. We knew whatever this was, we both needed whatever was happening on each side. And I didn't know what it meant then, but I knew that I was never going to be the old version of myself again. And I never was. And it's kind of crazy to me because I talked yesterday about some of the hate that I was receiving online from friends of mine that I had been friends with for years. And when I quit drinking, those relationships just fell apart. Some of them had already had, they'd been on their way out, but all of them just pretty much crumbled. And I had to really reevaluate who was actually here for me and who was actually just here for how I made them feel or what they could kind of use me for, like what I did for their life. And it made me start looking at people differently. And honestly, I think the second year I was just full of resentment. I was full of hurt. It's where all my sadness and grief and anger started really coming to life. And it's funny because I went through so many hard things the first year. I genuinely believed, you guys, I genuinely believed I had healed it all. I had gone through the hardest things. And it turns out year two was so much more trying because now it was like self discovery and figuring out why I had allowed all of these crazy things and the way that people were treating me. And I was putting these people up on pedestals. Like, what was I doing? I was putting these memories way up high, and I was really, really degrading who I was. I was lessening myself for people that lied to me and didn't truly love me and only called me when it was convenient to them. And they did not care. They did not care when they hurt me. They did not care when we had plans and they just bailed on me. It was intense. I had friends that I had moved them multiple times, and I asked them to show up and move one item with me, and they just got drunk and bailed on me and laughed about it. They didn't even care. And thank God I've always been able to figure it out, and I've always had these incredible people in my corner, even when it was difficult. And I was realizing in year two, I was mad at myself because I understood how much power I gave to the wrong people for so long, how much I was taking advantage of the wonderful people in my life by not celebrating them more often, by not thinking about them more often, by not giving them more power and more of my energy and all of my wonderfulness. Like, why was I draining myself on these miserable humans because I could see them happy and I could see them not carrying around everything they were carrying? And I really thought if I could just be there and make them happy and try to be understanding and empathetic and go above and beyond for them, that maybe they would understand how great it felt to have that, and they would embody that and they would be that more. Because I also knew that that was the way for them to have a better life. And that's not what happened. Instead of me helping them out of their negativity, they kind of just pulled me into theirs. And they led me into some really terrible situations that I never wanted. I never wanted to move this fast. I was not interested in so many of the things that I got into so young and then stayed in for so much of my life. I knew I was hurting my body and my brain, but I felt so hopeless because it seemed like that's all there was. And again, if you did read my second book, or you do, you'll understand more about what I'm talking about. But when you grow up in these environments that you see all this chaos and destruction, and cops aren't real. They're not these safe figures that you think they are. And teachers are not these beautiful souls that are really there for you, and they understand life more divinely and can, I don't know, like everything I thought about adults was a lie. They're just people. They're just imperfect people who make mistakes and who have been walking around with unhealed trauma and so much baggage their entire lives. They don't know what they're doing either. And thankfully, I did have great experiences with teachers and other cops and things like that, so that it balanced the scales. so it wasn't all one-sided. If I would have only seen the cops like I saw in that book, I don't I don't think I would have had any trust in any police officer ever for the rest of my life. If I would have had all teachers like I did with those, especially those three teachers that I'm specifically referring to in that book. But granted, I had a lot of them. A lot. I had more bad teachers than I did good teachers, and more inappropriate teachers than I had good teachers. So it made it hard for me to really even respect the educational system growing up, and I honestly didn't care. I just had this is what I'm talking about though. Like the year 2, all of this started coming out. And I wasn't prepared for that at all. I thought year 2 would be a breeze because it was just stepping into who I am now. And turns out that is not as easy as I had anticipated. I got a lot of that anger out, but I really isolated hard. I needed space. I needed to be away from everyone. I needed to meet myself without everything else. So year 2 was genuinely about dropping all my resentment, all my anger, all my negative feelings about my past and about other people. And it was about changing it away from what they are doing to me into how I can use this to understand, how I can build a calm nervous system. How can I set boundaries that still feel empathetic and kind and soft without the resentment? And I didn't get it all. I didn't get it all. And here too, I just opened a lot of doors, a lot of windows. I was building a path. Year 3, I never thought I'd do another year, but year 3, I did. I stayed in it all year 3. And then we moved to the Ozarks, the Lake of the Ozarks, and I was working at a restaurant bar, and the people there were just fun, and they brought me back to a version of myself that I truly, truly enjoyed. And they brought me back to a side of my partner and I that I really enjoyed. And he had hung in there with me, and he had drastically cut back. We had had so many conversations about drinking, around drinking, about lying about drinking. We had dealt with a lot of things. And I just kind of wanted to take a break. Once I got to 3 years, it didn't feel like the streak was helping me. It felt so annoying. It felt like it was hurting me because I felt like I was now chained to this version of myself where I could never have a drink again. I could never, ever post that I had a drink or be somewhere in public and have a drink because so many people were looking to me for advice on how to keep going. And there's such a notion around not drinking that once you have a drink, it's all over. You have to start all the way back at 0. And all your progress was like for nothing. And I hated that. It felt so gross in my skin and my body. And I heard so many people talking about this. I saw people that had gone like 12 years without drinking, and then they slipped, and they were on their socials crying and just melting down. They were a complete mess. And they were so upset with themselves, and they were like 12 years down the drain or 3 months down the drain or whatever it was. And it was like, that energy, man, that energy, that was my year 2 energy. It was anger at everyone, at myself. And I was like, that did nothing for me. It wasn't until I learned how to bring it to light and be soft and kind with myself, which is what I spent all of year 3 doing, finding kindness for everyone in my journey, and understanding that forgiveness wasn't about forgiving people and then allowing them back into my lives to do the same thing. Forgiveness was about forgiving myself. It was about forgiving them. It was about forgiving all of us for being versions of ourselves we didn't understand at a time we didn't understand it. And we were all just genuinely trying our best, even if it doesn't feel like that. To somebody else, we genuinely were. We could only give what we had to give, and that was what we had to give. And I realized I don't want to hold any hate for anyone. And I don't want to be mad at myself. I don't want to sit here and keep feeling like I messed up my life and I will never be able to get back on track, or I'll never be able to just be a person that I want to be in this world. I just felt so restricted and just felt like I couldn't breathe. And now I'm 3 years in, and it's like, when is this ever going to get better? When is this ever going to feel fun again? And I had a drink, and it was a freaking blast. And then one night I even got a little drunk. It was 3 years and 4 months and some days. And then I just drank. I drank and I drank and I drank. And I didn't like that. I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like, my body was like, I'm not into this at all. My brain was foggy. But my habit was coming back. And it was so funny to me how I did over 3 years. I completely changed fundamentally everything that I am. And yet I was still this, like, falling back into these same habits and patterns. And it felt easy and free and fun. But all I could see was how out of alignment it was, and how much better I had felt when I wasn't drinking. So then I quit drinking again, but it was like 2 weeks here, a month there. And then I couldn't quite land on what it was I wanted out of this. And I felt like I needed to lie and hide. Not really lie, just hide. Just not offer up the truth to anyone online, because I wasn't sure how I felt about this yet. And I didn't need outside sources trying to conflict my feelings that were already conflicted. So I sat with it for a while, and I did stop drinking again. I just didn't drink at all. I said, I'm out again. I don't like that. I still don't feel like I have the best control over this, and I still feel like I can get pressured into drinking, and it was just a lot easier when I wasn't drinking. And I sat with it, and I understood that the version of me that I was truly aiming for all this time was a version that is just free and happy and peaceful. And I just see myself clearly, and I understand what I need, and I have no hesitation at all about giving myself what I need, and allowing myself to have fun, and allowing myself to be human instead of trying to be perfect or whatever it was I was trying to do. And I wanted to be able to have an experience where if I wanted to have a drink, I could have a drink. But I didn't like being drunk or tipsy or any of that anymore. I didn't like feeling bad. I didn't like staying up late and going out. None of that. I still didn't want to be around super intoxicated people. They're not my jam. I've done that my entire life, and I've done it to death. I don't want it anymore. So I knew I needed to, like, make my own way here. So I went a couple months, I don't know, quite a while, but I didn't keep track, and I just didn't want to drink. And I just went off of the notion that if I want a drink, I'll have a drink. If I feel like I want to drink because it's chaotic or because I'm trying to avoid something, I won't have that drink. I understood when I took that space, it allowed me to process all the pieces I hadn't quite put into place yet. I had them, but I hadn't put them into play so that they could work with the rest of my system. So I put them into place and I trained my system and I allowed myself the awareness of who I truly am. And I'm not somebody that treats my body poorly anymore. I am not somebody who is struggling in the way that I was all those years ago. My experiences, my life has drastically changed in the most beautiful ways. And I'm never going to be done evolving, growing, changing, learning, all of it. This is who I will be for the rest of my life. And if I fall off anything, it's okay. It's okay for me to fail at any point in my life. It is okay for me to try and fail because I fail forward always. I never, not once, have failed and then not gotten back up. And I don't know if you guys can see this stick right back here. This is hard, right back here. But that's actually a gift from my dad, from a tree that was in our backyard. And he wrote me this beautiful story, and he saved it for all these years, and he gave it to me on my 21st birthday. It was a story about watching me trying to climb that tree like everybody else was, but I was too little, I was too short, nobody would help me, of course. And so I just went out there one day when nobody was there, and he watched me just try and fall and try and fall, and I just failed and failed and failed, but I never gave up, and I got it. And then I used to climb that tree every day. That was my tree, and that's who I am. That's who I've always been. And it allowed me to understand I don't need to be afraid of failing. I need to embrace it. That's where I learned the most. That is where I am the most excited because it shows me why. And now I'm learning that I don't even have to fail because now I'm starting to understand what causes the failure. And I'm starting to understand the questions to ask before there's any failure. And it's just like a continuous stream of growth. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's invigorating. It feels incredible. But I was operating from the notion that I wasn't this version of myself. Nothing started changing until I allowed myself to meet the new versions that I had become in this process. I truly had to let go of the versions that I knew so well. I truly had to let go of memories and emotions and all of these things that I was hauling around with me, and I had to forgive myself. I had to forgive everyone because we were just trying our best. And then I had to learn all those things I didn't like. How could I show the world that they could do them differently? And I did that, and I was really successful, and being online was incredible. But then I just kind of hit a wall. I was very unsure of a lot of things again, and life was taking me in different directions that I thought it would take me, and things weren't working as quickly as I wanted, and financially it was so tough because I struggle so hard with wanting to just help everyone for free and being able to support myself. And it's a fine line between being very, very kind and very understanding, but yet taking care of yourself. And I know that there's a whole lot of you out there that are hearing this and you're going, yeah, I feel that. I feel that in my soul. I know you know. So that's why I'm doing a year. I'm doing a year because I truly understand how much growth comes from a 1 year commitment. And I am completely aware of how many things can go wrong. And my goal isn't to be perfect, but it's to just keep showing up. And I feel really excited about meeting who I am after I go through this year. I'm very excited to see how it compares, how it's different, how I can take things from both of these journeys and push them together and connect even more pieces. I'm so excited to see the connections this brings and the enlightenment that comes with this and just genuinely who I am on this journey. So that's why I'm doing this. I would love to hear if any of you have decided to follow along or to commit to your own journey for X amount of time. I would love to know what it is and why. I would love to know what this inspired. I love taking the conversation to a deeper level. I love connection with everyone. The whole reason I started this was to create community in places that I had never found community when I needed it. And I wanted to create so badly a space that you could show up and be imperfect and say the wrong things. And we could just have a real conversation about why things came out like that, why things seemed so emotional, so big, why we react and respond and assume and control and hate, and why we do all of these things that make us weaker as a whole. And this is where I'm doing it. This is it. This is different than it's ever been. Everything before this just feels like it was practice. It was getting me here. So, y'all, remember, if you want to follow along, subscribe to my YouTube, Convos with Brie. That is where I will be doing all of the long form videos, and I'll be documenting this every day. So I hope that you guys get something awesome from this. I hope that you enjoy it, and I'm really looking forward to see what happens for us all. And remember, nothing that is meant for you will miss you. That was fun. I like that one.